Hello, and welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings and get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of these stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village. And if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Guilbault Girls Show. I'm your host, Karen Guilbault, and today we have special guest, Jennifer Harshman. Jennifer is an upbeat overcomer, language lover, and agency owner who taught herself to read and write when she was just 3 years old and has not stopped. Consuming nearly 19,000 books so far, she began editing professionally in 1992, the year I graduated high school, polishing more than 200 books and 30 million words since. Wow. When she's not working with words and leading her team, Jennifer can be found with her family, coping with disabilities, homeschooling, playing with paint, or tooting a flute. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being on the show and being willing to be so vulnerable to share your story literally to the world, because you've been going on a lot of different podcasts lately. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to serve in any way that I can.
Well, I love it. So I do want to just note to the listeners that we will be discussing some topics of abuse and neglect that could be triggering for some. So, but with that being said, I believe your story has helped many, and it has really only began to touch the surface. So welcome. Okay, so I have listened to some of your previous podcasts that you were on as a guest, and you have shared some pretty vulnerable moments, like we said, that have occurred over your lifetime. You've survived a lot of terrible things, starting literally while you were in the womb. Mm-hmm. So would you be willing to share a little bit about your journey and the things that you had to overcome? Also some examples of how you overcame them, or some of the tools that you actually use today to get through things that still may haunt you today.
Sure.
I know that was a lot.
I'm happy to. So I did come from a horrific background, and I attribute a lot of it to the stubbornness that I was born with. I have had a lot of really dark times, so I can't say that, I've always been gung-ho or I've always been upbeat. I haven't. There were multiple times in my life that I just wanted to end it all. Mm-hmm. And so if people feel that way, like, I want to give them encouragement that tomorrow can be brighter than the dark nights. Okay.
Absolutely.
Everyone struggles with different things, and everyone goes through dark days. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to know that you're not alone, even when you feel like you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what was your family makeup? How many siblings did you have? Did they experience the traumas like you did? And what's your relationship with them today?
I'm the oldest of 5. I have one half brother, about a year younger than I was, and then 3 half sisters that were spaced a couple of years apart after that. My brother is now deceased. He overdosed. Okay. And he did not deal with the things that we went through. He didn't go through as much as I did. I really did take the brunt of all of it, being the eldest, and I was the redheaded stepchild, as they say. So I did take the brunt of it, but he still caught some, and he did not cope well, and he went down a totally different path than I did.
Yeah.
I'm not in contact with 2 of my half sisters. I do maintain contact with my youngest half sister, though. Couple of times a year, we'll text each other or call. We live hours apart, so getting together is not the most feasible thing, but I'm always open to that.
Mm-hmm. And how open are you about talking about some of the things that you went through growing up? And you don't, and you only share what you want to share.
I am an open book. My approach has always been, if there is something in my life, my experience, my knowledge that can help another person, who am I to deny them that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I'm actually a treatment foster care recruiter. I've been for 5.5 years. So, listening to some of your other podcasts and some of the things that you shared with them of what you've gone through growing up, a lot of these kids are in the similar situations that you have been in. So that, listening to your interviews on all of that really touched my heart, and opened it up like, wow, at one point, we may even invite you if you wanted to do a book bakery thing with some of our foster kids and then just kind of share your story. And so they can kind of have that hope to see, where the things you went through and how you came out of it.
You've got a deal. Let's do it.
But I think that would be amazing. So and another thing that, that got me too, I heard you talk about your experience at school and how really, it was a sanctuary for you. You knew that, as you said you knew that at school, nobody was going to kill you. Nobody was going to rape you, that you would be fed, and that school was a safe haven for the most part. But then on the flip side, you were treated very poorly by other students, as well as some of the teachers. So whether you were at home or at school, trauma was happening. There really was no real escape for you. So can you share a little more on that part of your life? Going through some of that stuff, and did you have any outlets that you could escape to or from?
Sure. So my family moved often because my parents were financially insolvent. They were addicts and they did not pay their bills. So sooner or later, even the nicest landlord is going to evict someone who doesn't pay the rent. So I moved a lot, and it seemed like everywhere I went, I was the poorest student in the school. And that was a big trigger for people to pick on me. And then also I was a major bookworm, major nerd. And of course, that's another, let's pick on this kid kind of a signal. And I had undiagnosed ADHD and autism. So my social skills were sorely lacking. So there's another, there were just so many things that kind of piled on there. And I did have an escape. It was books. I could read, and I did. I read everything I could get my hands on, and I would kind of just mentally dive right into the pages between the covers. While I was reading, that was, I could go anywhere. I could be anything. I loved it.
What advice would you give, again, as I was talking to you about some of the foster kids and stuff, what advice would you give them? What would you say to them to hang on to that hope and to help them come out of the darkness and begin to see that light, if you will? What would be some advice, not even just the foster kids, any kids, that are going through tough times?
If I could go back or talk to my younger self,
a good one.
So I'll approach it that way. I would say you can do amazing things. You're stronger than you even know. And look for the people who are the bright spots. There are people who care about you, whether you know it or not. There are people who want the best for you, even if they don't come out and say it, but connect when you can, and just realize that there's so many opportunities for you now that did not exist 20 years ago. You're going to make it. You're going to do great.
You're like giving me chills. So I also heard you talk on one of the podcasts about having had multiple failed attempts of suicide. So how old were you? And how do you feel now looking back when you talked about that one doctor who told you to go home and find your purpose? So how did you find your purpose and how did you turn that corner?
Well, it was 3 attempts when I was 12 years old. I was living with Nana. So it seems really odd that a pretty safe environment. So it seems, well, you got out of a lot of this junk that was going on. Why try to commit suicide then? And I think it was because I finally, I thought that things should get so much better and I should feel so much better when I did get into Nana's house and away from a lot of the other stuff. And it didn't. It did not instantly clear up. And I felt very hopeless. And no one would do anything about what had been happening. So right. That gave me even more of a hopeless feeling. So Nana took me to the same doctor. And on my third attempt was when he lost his temper with me. And he said, normally, I do not get into religious or spiritual matters with my patients, but with you, and he knew that my family was a family of faith. And he goes, but with you, I'm going to. This is ridiculous. Like, somebody wants you here for a reason. I suggest you pull your head out of your butt and figure out what it is. And then he said, get out of my office. He was so angry with me. Now, he did not know my history. He did not know what was going on in my life. He just saw this 12-year-old girl in his office who had attempted suicide 3 times within about a month. And he was just fed up. Now, at the time, I was really upset with him. I was angry. Who was he to talk to me that way? He didn't know my story. Mm-hmm. But I did go home and think about that. And I thought, when he tells me it's medically impossible for me to still be alive after what I did to myself, and not just once, but 3 times, there had to be something supernatural going on. There had to be a reason for me to still be here. Mm-hmm. And I was also very mad at God because he wouldn't let me die. And I really wanted to at the time. Well, now looking back, I'm so thankful that he didn't. I'm so thankful that that doctor had the backbone and that he did get angry with me and that he did speak those words to me, because that was my turning point.
God was using him as a vessel to get through to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the purpose that I found was to protect my half sisters from any of the things that I had gone through. So being of service, that was where I really started taking on that type of character, that type of personality, that I had a reason to be here and I was going to make the most of my time here.
Yeah. Pretty powerful. Okay. So who were some of the most influential people in your life? I mean, obviously, that doctor really, who else did you have in your corner that you were able to lean on?
Nana. She was disabled and lots of health problems. So there was not a lot that she could do, and especially financially, because she was on a fixed income. She had Social Security, disability, and food stamps, and that was it. So she couldn't, get a lawyer and do something about things that had been happening to me, but she loved on me and she did what she could to protect me.
Yeah.
And then later I had some instructors in college who also inspired me, but mostly, and probably I would say 90%, it was authors, books. That's where I got my inspiration. That's where I learned almost everything I know.
All right. So with all the trauma too that you've experienced growing up, how did that impact your relationship with others and friends and boyfriends and even your marriage?
Wow.
I know
it impacted it deeply. And even today, I still have some things that, that I'm dealing with, and it still affects relationships. I had some friends that I lost because I went through a really cynical, negative type of time. And I was really upset with what my parents had done to me for 18 years. And I was venting about it, probably too much. And a friend told me, "You're a real Debbie Downer, and walked away. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Oh gosh. And so, of course, I talked to my therapist about it. I had been through years and years of therapy. And she said, well, that's some really good feedback. And your friend must love you an awful lot to tell you such a thing. And I said, okay, so what do I do here? And she goes, well, what do you want to do here? What kind of person do you want to be, Jennifer? And so I sat there and I wrote out the kind of person I wanted to be. And that was another good turning point in my life.
Mm-hmm. I love this is like such great advice for so many people out there. When you go, okay, so I know I'm like going in, I'm like deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Please let me know if anything is too much.
You're doing just fine.
Okay. So when you got pregnant and had your kids, what did you do to make sure that you broke that cycle, if you will, knowing that you didn't want your kids to experience the traumas growing up like you did? That's always a fear of everybody. Like, there's always things you're either going to be just like them or you're going to be totally opposite. Like,
Mm-hmm. And I talked with my husband often about what kind of parents we wanted to be, because I did not want to be like my family at all. And I didn't want to swing too far the other direction and be permissive and, harm my kids in that way. So it felt like I was walking a fine line and trying to keep a balance between extremes. And I did everything that I could to protect my kids without being like a helicopter parent. You have to let them make decisions. You have to let them fall and skin their knees, things like that. But there was one time a neighbor came, I could tell that he was trying to groom my daughter. He came to the door with a puppy he had just bought and tried to, lure her out of the back door and all of this type of thing. And I walked out there and I was like, oh, no. Took her and brought her into the house and talked to my husband, and that the neighbor was the son of our landlord. And I said, we cannot have this man grooming our kids. I found out he was a registered sex offender. My daughter was exactly his type, age, hair color, everything. And I said, we absolutely have to move. We have got to protect our kids. Yeah. And so within about a month, we had found another place in that town and we moved and did not see that person anymore. So you have to do the things that you have to do. And when you know what to look for, it makes it a lot easier to spot the dangers.
Yeah. Yeah. You ended up becoming very sick, and were actually told by the doctors back in 2006 to basically go home and prepare to die.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit more in detail with the listeners, what it was that you were sick with, how you felt in that moment, and what did you do next?
So I had been living a very stressful life for about the first 30 years of my life. So lots of stress hormones. I lived on adrenaline, cortisol, all that awful stuff. And at the time, for about a year previous, I had been working over 100 hours per week. I was working in a grants department at a community college full-time. I was running a homeless shelter and soup kitchen full-time volunteer. And then I also ran my church nursery. So plus I had 2 preschoolers. Wow. So I really was just burning the candle at both ends and running all the time. And my body just said, we're done. 30 years of this is enough. And so my adrenal glands started to shut down. And then that caused what they call cascading systems failure. So once my adrenals went, then my liver, then my kidneys, my pancreas, like everything was just shutting down, not producing the hormones that they're supposed to produce, not functioning the way they're supposed to function. And so the university hospital told me, you need 5 organs to be transplanted, but we can't get you on a single list because you're such a high risk. If it were 1 organ, fine, but the other 4 knock you out of the running. So there is nothing we can do for you. Go home, kiss your babies goodbye, pick out your coffin. You'll probably be dead in 48 hours.
Oh my God.
That was how I felt. I sat there in shock.
Shock.
These 5 doctors looked at me and they said, "We're so sorry." And then they walked out and they just left me sitting there on that table. And finally, I thought, I better take my purse and go home and tell my husband. And I knew I wanted a black coffin with a purple satin lining. And I was thinking of the flowers and I'm planning these things. And I went and I told him. And he very lightheartedly, he was like, "That's not going to happen." And I was like, 5 doctors just looked at all my labs, looked at all these things. They just told me this. And he goes, "I don't care. Doesn't matter. They're wrong." And I was so upset with him. I was angry because he wasn't taking it seriously. And he's like, "No, you're going to be fine." And I was like, "You are so in denial." Okay, whatever. And so then I told him, I said, "Okay, if I'm only going to live a couple more days, I'm not working. I'm not cooking. I'm not cleaning. I'm not doing any of those things. I am going to love on my babies." And so I plopped on the couch with the 2 preschoolers and we watched cartoons and we colored pictures. And when they were sleeping, I wrote them letters because I wanted them to know me and to know what kind of person that I thought they should be, to be a good person. These are the types of things. And so I wrote those letters out and I gave them to my husband. He says, "I'm going to put them up on the shelf in the closet. And when you decide to throw them away, because you are going to be just fine, then you can throw them away when you want to." And I ended up giving them to my kids later. They have those. But I went back week after week for labs. And my main doctor, he was just blown away. And he kept saying, "I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep it up." And I said, part of it is I had completely changed my diet. I was only eating whatever I could pick up out of the refrigerator. So fresh produce was basically it. I had 0 stress, 0 work. I was laughing and loving my kids. And I also had our entire church's prayer chain praying for me constantly. And it took 7 months from the day that my doctor and that whole team told me to go home and die before my doctor said, "Jennifer, I am taking you off of the terminal list and changing your status to critical." Now, most people hearing that they're in critical condition is a very bad thing. But for you, this is really good news. Go out and celebrate, have an ice cream cone or something.
Wow. Sorry. Okay. Can you share a little bit more about your kids? How old are they now? What type of needs do they have? And how do you get through some of the trying times now being a single parent and sole breadwinner? But not only that, like everything that you just went through, it's like you have to make sure that you take care of you. And that comes first so you don't have any setbacks. So how do you do that? Like, do you know when you need to pull the reins back and say, "Listen, God has already been here. He's telling me I'm here. I need to take it back a notch." Self-care, like what do you, so tell me.
Okay. So I have 3 kids. My eldest is 21, then it's a boy. And then my daughter is about to turn 20 and my youngest is 15, boy. So special needs, ADHD, autism. There's been some food allergies and just all sorts of, like when the older 2 were in school, which we did for the first few years, they had IEPs that were really long. And I did have to learn to set limits and to take care of myself, because I learned that the really, really hard way in 2006 and 2007 when I was recovering. And now I'm currently not in contact with my daughter because she is not dealing with her own issues and instead is being very abusive to the family. And so I had to say, honey, I love you. And for now, I'm going to have to love you from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
So she knows that if and when she ever decides to be kind, be respectful, treat us like people deserve to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
then she's definitely welcome home. Until then, I have to protect my youngest, and I just have to. It's hard. It's hard. It really is.
No matter how you look at it, it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah. But both boys are doing great. My eldest, now you probably wouldn't know that he has autism. So many interventions and so much work that we have done together over the years. He holds down a full-time job, and he has a friend group, and he still lives at home, and he's fully an adult.
Yeah.
It's been a long, hard journey, and I'm so proud of
him, as you should be, Okay, well, we're going to switch gears now. So we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about your latest book called Your Book Bakery, Making It Easy to Write a Book. So I was excited to come across this because my daughter loves to write. And I'm always at a loss of, okay, is it good enough to share, or what would be the next steps? Or I don't even know how to begin any of that. She spent hours and hours and days when she has her personal supports and they're, scribing everything for her. And now she'll sit at the table and she'll use the speech to text. And then if she doesn't know how to spell things or whatever, she'll ask Siri. She's just, and ever since even when she was little, my mother always used to write stuff down. She's like, you really are. And some of the things I'm like, oh, wow. So actually how I found you, to be quite frank, we were in a podcasting collaboration group that we're in on Facebook. And I had put in the search button disabilities because I don't find a lot of disability podcasts. And if anybody out here knows of them, send them my way because I would love to interview them and be on their show as well. But there was a list and you were actually on there talking. And then I went and I was like, oh my gosh, and she wrote a book and this and that, and she does this. And as soon as I got that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to buy it. So yeah, so this is her book, Your Book Bakery, Making It Easy to Write. And then she came out with a workbook. Hello, how awesome is that? So yeah, so we are it is our goal this summer when she is off, for us to really tackle all of this and really start on stuff. So I'm excited. Yeah, so we are going to take just a quick break. I will edit this out. So we'll be right back because I'm going to bring Faith in because I know she wants to be part of this conversation with you too. Okay.
Great.
All right. Hang on. So we're back. So now we have Faith with us, and Faith, this is Miss Jennifer.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So Faith. I was telling Miss Jennifer how we got her books, and that we are going to be working in these this summer. I know that
look at how large this one is. Rid of that one.
Yeah, I wanted you to have lots of room to write.
Exactly, and her and her personal supports, they did kind of when we first got in and they were going through it. So yeah, so we're very excited.
Well,
okay. So tell us how this book came to be.
Okay. I have been helping authors for a really long time. And when I was talking with some of the people that I have a group coaching program, some of them were asking me about my process and if I had a metaphor or, some symbolism that I would use to explain how easy it can be to write a book. And so I thought, it's a replicable process. If you know what someone has done and how they did it, then you can do it. And I use the metaphor of a recipe. So if you put the right ingredients in the right way, and you let it bake, then you can do this. So I said, if you can follow a recipe to bake a cake, then you can write a book.
That is brilliant. It is
this
absolutely
book,
brilliant.
This book came about because in that group coaching program, I had written a manual for the students, and the students were all adults. But I do work with people of all ages. And so I had written a manual for them. And one of the guys in there asked me one day, he says, Jennifer, could you write a book for us? And so I paused and I said, let me clarify. You do have a copy of the manual, right? And he goes, yes. And I said, and so you're saying that you need me to go further than what I've done in the manual? Like it's not sufficient? And he's like, I'm sorry, but I was like, no need to apologize. I'm just trying to clarify. And he goes, yes, could you please just write us an entire book? And so I paused for just a second. And I was like, yes, I'll write you a book. And so I started with that manual as the basis of it. And then I just expanded upon that. And a couple of weeks later, I sent them the rough draft and I said, how's this? They loved it. And, it wasn't too long after we went to press.
Wow. Yeah, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Mm-hmm, it is.
Thank you.
So why do you say that almost everyone wants to write a book and that they can?
I think, I think it was the New York Times did a poll, and more than 80% of people said, yes, I want to write a book someday. But when we look at the stats of how many people actually do write and publish a book, it's far less than 1%. I mean, it's like 0.006 or something crazy. It's like almost zero. So it blows my mind. But I think that we are creators.
Mm-hmm.
We're storytellers,
mm-hmm.
and we want to help other people. Most people do. There may be an exception here and there that's just like, no, I don't ever want to write a book. And that's fine. But for those who do, they have all these mental blocks, mm-hmm. and they think, oh, I have to take a lot of time off of work to write a book, or I have to do a whole lot of research and it's going to take me a really long time, or it has to be 300 pages long. Like so many things that we tell ourselves that are just not true.
Mm-hmm.
To qualify as a book on Amazon, it only has to have 2,500 words. I wrote more than that in a blog post this morning. So it's not that, it doesn't have to be that big.
It
right. Really doesn't.
It took me an hour to write a book, and people are like, how did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to plan it out. It's a lot of creative activity.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely do have to plan it out. Yep.
That's so awesome. Share with us some of the other services that harshmanservices.com offers.
Okay. Well, one thing, I just started my new site that's the same as the title. So yourbookbakery.com.
Okay.
But it's still the same business. It's just, I separated it to eliminate some of the confusion. So we do everything from cover to cover and beyond. A lot of times people will come to me and say, I'm a coach, or I'm a podcaster, I'm a fill in the blank. And I know that I need to write a book, but I don't know where to start. Or they'll come to me and say, I started and I got stuck. And I'm like, that's okay. Lots of people get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever they are along the path, I just kind of come alongside, take them by the hand, and walk them down the rest of the path.
I've gone back 2 years later and finished stuff that I started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll start and then come back to it and finish it and add on to different things. And she definitely really wants to write some children's books. But so she has cortical vision impairment. So basically what that means is that she can see what we see, but her brain perceives it differently. So they teach it in there's a specific font. It's Roman something. I'll have to email it to you.
It's like red shapes.
And it is. It's almost like bubble letters, and it has red and in it, and then like it's either in black and then it has the red bubbles around it. It's really, really neat.
I don't even use them anymore because I got too used to not using
it, but it does still help. So, but we thought it would be great to do it and then actually have the font in that for cortical
Yeah.
vision impairment, because anybody can read it, but it will
Right.
it will allow them to read it as well. And then it will also bring about awareness about what cortical vision impairment is. And it actually, I mean, it qualifies her to go to the Maryland School for the Blind.
Wow.
So, and the one thing that she always loved, especially when she was little, they would, when she was first, like, it was very hard for her learning to read because of the cortical vision impairment. And then when she finally was doing really good, and she first started Maryland School for the Blind, and they knew how to teach her the proper way with everything, and she was doing really, really well. And then COVID hit, but she was enjoying.
I'm actually recovering from COVID.
Yeah, she is
I
recovering from
did a
COVID.
horse yesterday, and
You did.
it's a second time around, so it hit me harder, but now I'm better. So
Yes, she tested
I'm
positive
going to
last
school tomorrow.
last Thursday is when she ended up getting it. But they would have them go into the younger kids' classes and read their books. So Wednesday book or whatever they put together, they have them practice and practice and practice with everything. And then they have them go in and read to the kids. I'm like, how awesome would that if you wrote some books and then you can go in and read them to the kids? Huh? You're so funny.
I'm on 6 o'clock brain.
You're on 6 o'clock brain. You're so funny. But yeah, I think it's awesome. And then I also saw too that you were starting to do things where you're like reading to kids, you're reading. So tell me a little bit more about that. How is that going? And where do you see that, moving towards?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you so much. So I was on a Zoom call, kind of a mastermind call, and one of the ladies shared a win. And she said one of the other members appeared in her classroom via Zoom, read a story and her classroom's first graders, read a story to her class. They loved it. He loved it. And she said she was thinking about having him come back and do it again, or maybe inviting other people to come and do the same. And boy, I shot my hand up in the air and I said, I will do it. You tell me when and where. I will be there. I love reading aloud to kids, and I'm to anybody really, but I had been, an elementary school teacher, been a daycare owner. Like I have so much fun when I do that. So I was definitely willing to, bring some excitement into the room. And she said, could you also talk about what it's like to be an author yourself? And I said, oh yeah, even better. I can tell them that they can become authors too. And she loved it. So we did it, and they sent me, and it was a total blast. And a few days later, they sent me this stack of drawings of them doing, like, baking a book together with me.
Oh my God.
And guys, when I tell you, I bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh
they're
my
just
gosh.
adorable.
I
Adorable.
love it.
So I thought, I want to do that more.
Yeah.
And I had already been wearing this costume with the
No, I
baker's
love it.
hat and the white apron, and I had a whisk as a microphone. I had been making some TikTok videos. And so when I showed up in her classroom on Zoom, I was all in this getup. And I thought, you know what? I could do this every day. I love it so much. And if the classroom wants to write a book, if the teacher will facilitate that, they can write a book together, illustrate it. I will do the editing and publish it for them. I'm having so much fun with this. I cannot even tell you.
Awesome. Now, so you do the younger kids. Are you thinking about doing more of the teenagers or the young adults, and then kind of like doing separate type of? That is awesome.
Yep. I work with people from like pre-K all the way up to geriatric.
Yeah. Wow. That is amazing. That is so awesome. So awesome. Wow. Okay. So is there any questions you would like to ask Miss Jennifer? Not off the top of your head?
Yeah.
I put you on the spot?
Yeah. Ooh, maybe like, do you have like kids come up with ideas for you to make a book? Like for ideas? Do they give you ideas of like, oh, you should make a book about this? Or
so do they inspire you or give you more examples of books that you should come out with?
Sometimes there was there was one recently that asked me to write. So I have written a children's book that is with an illustrator right now.
Okay.
Hoping to get it out the next couple of months. And it's called Miha, the Little Fruit Tree, which is a story that I wrote for my daughter when she was young. And when I mentioned that to the students, I said, next time I come to your classroom, I will read you a book that I wrote. And a little boy said, could you write another one for us? And I said, what would that be? And he says, well, there needs to be a kid book maker, a kid that wants to write a book. And I said, you got it, buddy. So I'm working on that one.
That is awesome. And so the book you were just talking about, was that the one I know you had shared an illustration?
Yes.
That was absolutely gorgeous. Like that was
I'm so excited. I met the illustrator years ago. I connected her with an author whose book I edited, and I had edited the illustrator's book a few years before that. So she had drawn all of the maps in her book, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's great. And I realized that she also does illustrations for other people. So when another client of mine said, I'm writing a children's book, I need an illustrator, I introduced the two, they hit it off, and they've done 2 books together now. So I knew when I wrote when I started writing children's books, I knew exactly where I was going for my illustrations.
Yeah. Wow. I need to hook you up. There's a one of our friends, really, really sweet. She well, Sarah too, but Vicky, she had brain surgery and had a lot going on with her health for a long time. And she actually used to make what they called like paper beads. And she actually invented and had a patent for this tool. And it was amazing. But anyway,
I was like 6 and I remember having so much fun playing with those all the time.
Yeah.
They're so useful.
Yeah. And she's going to the libraries and do it. And we went in and used it. So, but she kind of put a hold on different things. But since COVID, she's really worked on her art, and you should see some of these, like, it's fantastic. It actually reminded me of the one that you posted, like the depth of all of it. I'm like, girl, you're like, what are you doing? You need to be doing something with all these. But I know that like they're putting on some of them on display in Haverty Grace, where it's, the town it's a quaint town, and it's just an awesome town. But yeah, so the other person that I want to hook you up with too is Sarah. Sarah, she goes by SJ Childs.
She has a couple kids with autism, and her husband's on the spectrum.
So yes, so her husband is on the spectrum. She too herself is on the spectrum, and all 3 kids are on the spectrum.
Sounds like my family.
She has a podcast. She was actually my mentor. So Faith had a documentary that aired on PBS back in 2021. And so when we were doing that, we got introduced to some people, and we did interviews, and one of them was for a podcast called Jimmy Apple, Living with a Disability. And then from there, he introduced me to Sarah, and we just all hit it off. And I've been wanting to do, I actually found my first periscope the other day that came up on my memories that we did in like 2016. Wow. That I bought my ring light and like the little Rode microphones. But at that time, Zoom really wasn't in. So I was like trying to be like, okay, now how can I go to these people's houses and interview and this and that, and put it off, of course. And then the podcasting came around. I'm like, oh, I really need to start a podcast. And they really helped mentor me to finally just get my butt up and just start it. And we're in season 2 and love it. So she's also, she's an autism speaker. She does conferences. She has published a few children's books. So she's another one that you would be great to hook up with, and like fantastic to be on her podcast as well.
Wonderful. I appreciate that.
Yes. And then we have back in 2016, I met a woman, Meg Zucker, and her book in 2020, she reached out to me to see if I would contribute to her book, and it's called Born Extraordinary. And it has 35 to 40 different parents contributed to the sections, and it's all on, disability, and it's just amazing. So we just did her interview that releases March 7th. And then she asked me if I would want to come and go to her some of her book tours. So I'm going to DC with her, and I'm
Oh my
going to
gosh,
kind of
that's
help
so exciting.
facilitate that and do the question and answers and kind of run that. So we're like really, really excited. She got the approval, and so yeah. So it's amazing. Like I love it. Again, like I said, it's a passion because one, it's like therapy for me, and two, you meet so many people, and it's just it's awesome. And we're sharing our lives and our journeys, and sharing all these tidbits that could be helping other people. And it's all about networking and just loving everyone. I don't know, as corny as that sounds.
That's okay.
I also
Corny, cheesy, it's all good.
I also get to take off from school for this, but I don't mind because I only have 2.5 years left. So
yes, you have 2.5 years left till you're 21. You can stay at school. So before we wrap things up, is there anything that you would like to share or plug or just give any advice or anything like that to the listeners?
Couple things. One, I want to hook you up with Nancy. She does a podcast about disabilities. So I will definitely get you that information.
Awesome.
And I would love it if your listeners would check out yourbookbakery.com. I've got some freebies there. I call it, goodies, little treats, things like that. And I want to encourage you. So my tagline or motto has been, with the right attitude and resources, you can do amazing things. And if you will choose the first, you will find the second.
Amazing. Okay. So before we part, I had sent you hopefully you got a chance to look at the What's Your Word flyer. So as a small token of appreciation, I always gift all of my guests with a hand stamped token that I stamp individually with a hammer and 1-letter stamps. And I either put it onto a keychain, a bracelet, it could go on a necklace, anklet, whatever you want. And so I wanted to see if you would be willing to share what your word is and why.
My word is recipe. That is my word for this year. And the why is because I'm making deliberate, intentional decisions about what ingredients belong in my life, what things need to go into my schedule and what don't fit for this season. And I have been making a lot of really hard decisions in the last couple of weeks, cutting things that are not a good fit for me anymore or that are not for this time. And that's been difficult because, as a kind of a people pleaser kind of thing, I did not want to hurt any of my friends or any of those relationships. And fortunately, every single one has received it very well. They've been gracious and understanding and wishing me well. So recipe is my word, like knowing what to put in and what to leave for another time.
You're so smart. You use big words.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. So I have on your little thing, and tell me if there's anything different on this for the out show, to contact Jennifer Harshman and sign up to receive a stack of goodies to help you with your nonfiction content creation or repurposing. You can visit, it's either harshmanservices.com or bookbakery.com.
Your book bakery.
And I'm going to have all this in the show notes, yourbookbakery.com. She'd love to talk with you and share the resources with you whenever she's not fulfilling her roles as a homeschooling wife, mom, and the book dragon with a big appetite. I love that. The book dragon with a big appetite.
Makes me want to know to get that book dragon. Get to know that book dragon.
So thank you for sharing your story. I just give you so much courage. That's not even the word. I give you so much. You have so much courage. You give me courage. You've done a lot. You've been through a lot, and you've done a lot of amazing things. And God definitely has you, where you need to be now. And it's all about that self-care and self-love. And I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope we keep in touch. And thank you, everybody. Until next time. And again, I'll have all her information in the show notes. Bye.
Bye. And guys, I will be back as soon as I can. I apologize. I've been MIA.
You're weird. Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show to the masses. If you would like to support the Guilbault Girls on another level, click on the link in the show notes to make a donation in any amount. Add your address and you'll receive a hand-stamped token with the word village on it in appreciation. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls. Till next time.